Great stuff. Now please welcome the writer-director of Tyrannosaur, Mr. Paddy Considine. And one of the stars of the movie, Eddie Marsan.
Hey, Chris.
Great to see you, man. Eddie?
Hello.
Hello, how's it going? Paddy, let's talk about what Tyrannosaur is, because people may not know. We've just seen the trailer, but can you give them an idea of the film in a broader scope?
Yeah. Oh, God.
Put you on the spot.
Yeah, Tyrannosaur, I suppose, is a, people have described it as a pretty tough film, but I always wanted the film to be a love story, sort of about two people from two different ends of society, if you like, who sort of form a kind of companionship. Become soulmates, if you like, because they're both living with sort of fears and difficulties of their own. And I guess the film was just that, I'd acted for so many years that I just felt the need to begin to sort of write and direct my own work after, having collaborated on other people's work over the years, and I thought it was time that I established my own voice. And I think Tyrannosaur is the result of years of frustrations and also just sort of, I suppose, making sense in some way of my place in the world, of the world that I grew up around.
Yeah.
Whereas Tyrannosaur is a very sort of heightened and at times extreme sort of interpretation of that. I guess it was, because you write it, I guess it's your voice coming from a place of expression, and I think I was just trying to make sense of a lot of things.
And Eddie, can you talk about your character and tell us who he is? And
I played the character of James, who's married to Olivia, and he's not going to win the Husband of the Year competition. He's abusive, and he's a control freak, and he's, in a sense, he's the secret that Olivia keeps quiet.
and where did you two guys meet? Because I know, Paddy, you'd met Olivia on Hot Fuzz,
Yeah.
of all movies. So you met Eddie on Red Riding, I presume? Or?
Yeah, we both. We were just saying that the first time I saw Eddie was on Frith Street, and yeah, swinging around a lamppost. Yeah, we just happened to pass each other, and there was an awkward sort of, I know you, and we just crossed paths, and I rang my wife and said, I think I've just walked past Eddie Marsan, But it was on Red Riding. I mean, I was aware of Eddie's work for years, I'd seen his work and been a fan of his work, so we met on Red Riding, and when I wrote this role, I was trying to think of who would be the ideal person for it, and we didn't have a great deal of money to make the film, but I knew that I needed somebody who was quality, and because there was some difficult scenes within the relationship between Olivia and Eddie, between those two characters, it was really important to me that Olivia was comfortable with who was playing James. I didn't want anybody who was a bit obtuse and a bit method, as they like to call it. I needed somebody, a good actor, who could be in control of it and really understood that there was a human being there and not a sort of a superficial monster.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Eddie kindly read for the role, because he didn't really have to. His
The
work,
part's yours, essentially.
his work
but I'm gonna read
speaks
it
for
anyway.
itself. But I just needed to know how, it was going to work with Olivia, and Eddie was the first actor in at the top of the day, and it just blew everybody away. And then I had to meet another 15 actors, knowing that I'd bagged it.
So you just sped read them really quickly. It was
Yeah,
like,
got them in and out.
bye.
Yeah, I gave them more time, but it was really interesting. Having been on the other side of it so many times in the casting chair, going into a room, meeting people, and it's a really sort of odd process being on the other side of it. But you see how it works, because ultimately, it's not about whether people the people who didn't get the role were good or bad. They're just not right for that role.
Absolutely. And I think Olivia's actually here, so please put your hands together for Olivia Colman.
Sorry.
That's a chair. Olivia will soon follow.
Sorry.
Here she is. Olivia Colman, everybody. Yeah.
You're late.
Sorry.
You're late.
Sorry.
Again.
Were you like this on set? Or
Yep.
It's a nice tight ship. So Olivia, can you talk about your character? And you're playing Hannah in this. Who is Hannah?
Hannah is, on the face of it, a very a middle-class woman with very strong. She's a Christian, very strong faith in God, and she seems like everything is great in her world, but it's not.
I think, you know, because it was based on a short film that I wrote, and when I made this short called Dog Altogether, like after I'd done it, all I really wanted to do with the short was just prove that I could tell a narrative in 15 minutes. I just thought, looked at it really as an exercise.
Yeah.
Just thought, you know, you've talked about directing for so long, see if you can do it. And you know, so I didn't pay much mind to the aesthetics of it, the camera really. I just wanted to concentrate on the narrative. And when I sort of put the short film out, people responded to the short film and said, you know, it felt like the beginning of a bigger movie, and they wanted to know what happened to these characters. And so I just continued to write where the short left off.
Because the short's essentially the first 15 minutes of Tyrannosaur.
That's right, yeah. And then what happened was, it was the very first scene afterwards where Joseph, I don't know if hopefully some of you will see the film, Joseph enters the charity shop a second time where Hannah's character works, because Olivia's character works, because he's drawn to her for some reason on a higher level, and he's drawn to this woman. But he kind of verbally abuses her and dresses her down and makes assumptions about her life. You know, that she's some happy clapper cake baking, you know, charity cake, you know, charity case, and doesn't really know what life's like in the real world, as he puts it. So then that really was the point that it turned, because I remember even writing it and just thinking, okay, well, then let's see what she's living with. Let's see if you're right about that. And so the film started to play with that idea of perceptions and how we sort of make assumptions about people superficially. You know, when we meet them, we can't, we sort of can't help it.
So how much of Hannah's circumstances were set in stone when you started to write her story, or how much of it did her story dictate to you?
It just happened.
Yeah.
You know, and the way that I write is, I think when you write, what works for me is that I just switch off, and you just let the story unfold without thinking about it too much. And that doesn't make sense to some people, but the characters, if you trust them and trust the process, they'll tell you where they want to go. You know, they'll choose their path, and it's a bit like being a third, like you're conjuring some sort of spirits, oddly, and you're watching this little world unfold in front of you. And I didn't know that she was gonna go home and she was gonna be in a tough situation with her husband and being mentally and physically abused in any way. It just sort of happened, and then the story just took off, really.
And Olivia, did you have any idea where Hannah's story may go when you finished Dog Altogether? Because I imagine you did 1 day's work, maybe 2 days' work on that?
Yeah, 1 day.
1 day.
No, I didn't. I know that Paddy was thinking of another short after Dog Altogether, following Hannah's story. And so I had a little inkling of that her life wasn't quite as nice as you imagine. But no, I didn't know when we filmed Dog Altogether what her life was like.
And so,
I don't think.
were you... where exactly did you spot Olivia's potential? Because you met on Hot Fuzz, which is a comedy.
Yeah.
Olivia, you know, you're best known for Peep Show and working with Mitchell and Webb, and this film is a bit of an awakening, a revelation for you in many ways. But did you know you had this in you? And Paddy, did you know she had it in her?
No, because well, no, you know, I wanted Olivia in this film based on her personality. She was the right person for the job. She just is naturally a very caring woman, you know, and I think she's a good girl, and she had all the right qualities to play that role. Because I think, you know, you could have cast some actresses in that role who were not more established, let's say, but they're more known for a certain, you know, kind of cinema, let's say. And I don't think there would have been any revelation, because I think you would have been expecting things to sort of go a bit wrong. Yeah. Whereas with Olivia, because she's never been seen in that sort of arena before, in a movie with this kind of subject matter that required a really high standard of performance, you know, to be honest with you, I didn't know that she could do that. You know, why would I? But I followed my heart, because I knew that she was the right person, and I just had to sort of really really sort of have faith in that. You know, one of the reasons that I wanted to become a director, amongst the many of them, was that I'd been on film sets as an actor and I'd felt very adrift on film sets. I'd had no help from directors, and I just thought that some directors I realised don't really understand actors and don't get the best out of actors, and I really thought that I could work with actors very well, and so to see Olivia do this movie and to undergo a really huge transformation as an artist was an incredible thing to see, and it was confirmation that yeah, you were right. All you got to do is follow your instincts.
Yeah.
And I suppose if any of the actors I worked more closely with, more intimately with, it probably would have been Olivia. And I don't know why that was, because by the end of the film, it wasn't like she needed help, but at times it just felt like you were another character off screen, just feeding into her mind, you know. But direction is knowing when to also step away.
Yeah.
Like the incredible final scene of the movie, there's a huge revelation in there.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about this scene and thinking, man, you know, today's going to be a really tough morning. You know, we've got to go to some depths. And she just came in and smashed it apart. You know, and it was just an incredible thing to see somebody realise their potential that way was amazing.
Olivia, were you daunted by this role, or did you grab it with both hands? Because I know you're doing comedy, but you maybe felt you've been corralled into doing comedy a little bit, and you wanted to try your hand at dramatic stuff.
No, what I found funny over the course of answering questions is that there's an implication of choice in an actor's career. Which I've certainly never experienced. And I went into it thinking a little bit of a play, a little bit of comedy, a little bit of drama, how lovely. Of course, it doesn't happen like that. And I got my work in comedy, and I kept getting my work in comedy, and that has been wonderful. But this Tyrannosaur is a job I've dreamt of since I was 12. I just never got a look in. You know, there's a list of comedics and a list of tragedians, and you're never allowed to cross over, or it's rare. And thankfully, Paddy took a punt, you know, and so yes, I grabbed it with both hands. I would have, you know, chopped off hands to try to get it. No one would say no to that part. It's beautiful, and the experience. I now never want to work with anyone else ever again. Just don't say that to my agent. She went like that.
Or Bill Murray, who you're
Bill
Murray.
He's all right.
Eddie, can you talk about working with Olivia on this? Because you came in for 5 days and, you know, played this role, which I imagine was very intense, very very heavy role for 5 days. Can you just talk about how that experience?
Well, I'd worked with Olivia before on one film before. Yeah,
I think so.
One film,
Yeah.
And
it's very memorable.
when we came in and to do when I came in to read with Paddy and Olivia, it was very, very clear to me that the thing about Olivia is she has this personality that she's very open, she's very easy to love, and as the character of James, you need these men love intensely. I mean, their idea of love is very narcissistic, but they love these women and they try to control them but they're very vulnerable, these men, and there's something about Olivia that makes it very easy to act with because she's so open and so easy to love. So therefore, in a sense, this sounds weird, but she's also therefore very easy to abuse because as an actor, you're only as good as the person you're playing opposite, and you have all the thoughts that when the camera is on me, all I'm thinking about is Olivia. And Olivia, in her performance and in the way she works and the way she creates things, is very thought-provoking. So it's very easy to do.
So it's it's almost instinctive, your reactions.
Yeah. You just, you sit there and you want to be loved by this woman. Therefore, it's very easy to be disappointed by her, and it's very easy to create James's warped sense of reality. With any other actress, if there was a hint of vanity in the actress, it would have fallen apart. But Olivia doesn't have that, and that's why it's very easy to act with her.
I don't want to get into too much into spoiler territory, but there's a really important scene between Hannah and James, which is very physical. Can you talk about filming that to an extent and working with Paddy in terms of the sensitivity of that scene and I guess emotional and physical scarring that preventing that, I suppose.
Paddy was very very thoughtful about things like that, and was a very nurturing presence and made us all feel very safe. So actually, it seems like that was shot 2 or 3 times tops.
Yeah.
And the rehearsal was you'd have to say the lines roughly. You'll be here, you'll fall here, whatever, and then just go. So you never had to, doing something like that 10 times would be a bit much. And Paddy always made us feel very safe.
Yeah.
And we feel very safe together. We know each other and like each other, and as soon as it was cut, Eddie would go, "You all right, mate? All right, everything's all right."
There's a great moment, and it didn't make the final cut. And I won't reveal the film, but there is an attack where Eddie attacks Olivia, and in the scene, it fades to black, and before we cut, you could just hear Eddie say to Olivia, "Oh God, are you all right?" Just like that, quite faintly. And I kept it in the film for so long. After it had gone to black, you just heard this voice go, "No, I didn't cut your eye, did I? That was it." He said to her, "Oh no, I didn't cut your eye, did I?" Something like that, and I kept it in for so long because it was just after the scene had ended, it was just this taste of the kind of dialogue that was about to occur after the attack.
And the shame takes
like
over.
the shame and the nurturing. Oh, I didn't know you did it. Oh, it was a little reveal of to what that dialogue might be.
Absolutely. Paddy, you've talked a couple of times already about feeling adrift as an actor on movie sets and maybe being neglected by directors. So is it fair to say when you set your mind to directing this, when you walked onto set for the first day, that you wanted to be the director that you'd always wanted to have as an actor?
Yeah.
and who is that director?
I think that when I started acting, I worked with Shane Meadows, and it was the first thing I ever did, and he was my mate, and so we did weeks and weeks of workshops, and this character just developed. I didn't know what I was doing, but all I was doing was making Shane laugh.
Right.
But after a while, this character sprang out the bag, and it became a totally different thing. And as hard as that film is for people at times, it was a really funny character to be. And I thought that was what it was all about all the time. And because the next time I did a film, it was with Pavel Pawlikowski, another really sort of inventive guy, who kind of finds the story as he goes, a really unique way of working. And I thought everybody did this. The only time it felt bad for me, when I say sometimes I'm not an actor, it was just that when you go onto some films, there's none of that. It's you learn the lines and you come in and you hit the marks, and it's more of a technical exercise, and that's where I failed without all that other work, without that sort of environment. That's where I would fall down. And I realised that a lot of that is essential to the art of acting, because that's how 90% of films are made. And people are very, very good at that, that kind of work. I just seem to fall down a little bit. I've been on film sets and you've forgotten a word, and someone's come up to you with a clipboard and gone, "Oh, you forgot to say," and you're just going, "Oh shit, this thing's becoming like a technical exercise," and it just always felt restrictive at times to me.
Or maybe a director hires you for what you've done in the past and just expects you to do that again.
I've actually said, I had somebody say to me once, it's what you did on Dead Man's Shoes. And I just went, no, it's not, you don't know what we did.
Yeah.
You don't know what was created that day, the vibe of it all, everything, the territory. You don't know that.
Yeah.
If I do that, you're just like every other actor who turns up, it happens to bad actors, and, So it's a really sort of odd area. But I love actors, I really do love actors. I love watching them. And I loved watching them I love watching them work. To be right behind the monitor was a real pleasure. And it was quite addictive. I loved it. But I do think Eddie's worked with Mike Leigh and lots of directors. There are directors that do sort of I think good directors create a playground for you to be able to feel safe enough in, that if you drop something you can pick it up. Like on the waterfront when I always forget the actress's name when she drops the glove and Brando picks up the glove and starts stroking it, and it has all these beautiful connotations. Well, on some films she dropped the glove And somebody go, cut, you know, or the actors go, oh, I've got to start again, or they go, oh, that was really great, we're just going to do another, you drop the glove.
Yeah.
A lot of people miss the moment,
Yeah.
you know, and I think a good director creates the environment for you to drop the glove, you know.
So, Olivia and Eddie, did Paddy create the environment to drop the glove on this movie?
Definitely. I mean, Paddy's one of us. He's one of our own. So this industry's, it's very easy to become a director, in a sense. You know, you need to, you can blag your way into becoming a director. You can have good qualifications, you can do a BBC course, and you can have a lot of ambition, and you can become a director. To become a professional actor usually takes about 10 years, you know. So when you get directed by an actor of Paddy's ability, it's fantastic because they're very clear and they know exactly what they're doing.
Olivia, I guess it's sort of an attention to detail that perhaps you might not get from other directors.
Yeah, well, and also the understanding of what it feels like. So, you do. The assumption is that an actor feels has nerves of steel and never feels embarrassed. But I don't think that could be further from the truth. And Paddy knows what it's like to feel vulnerable. And you are, you know, doing something in front of a crew of people, and Paddy just knowing that feeling and says the right thing, has an ability to say the right thing to the right person in the right way, and that it was lovely. It was a revelation.
And were there any moments in this film, like on the Wonderfront, any happy accidents, any happy glove dropping accidents that made it in? Or
I can't remember.
I mean, lots of moments made it in, lots of bits and pieces, you know, and
because it's about instinct, isn't it? Because you told me once you cut a 3-page monologue without even filming it.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, you know, we'd shot a wake scene in the film, and you went in the editing suite because I'm not sure about this footage because, you know, that they drop character. You can see Peter and Olivia, and you know, and I went, great, perfect. That's exactly what the scene's about. You know, this is about losing all that weight, and for once in the film, being free of all of that stuff, all that baggage. But then, after I'd shot the wake, I'd had trouble with this scene for a while, getting a location for it, and it was like a 3-page bit of dialogue between Peter and Olivia, and you know, in the film, Hannah's a Christian charity shop worker, and it was all about him asking her about God and religion and how she got there. And I just looked at it on set and just went, I'm not shooting that. You know, I don't want to know any of that. Why would I, you know? And, you know, so I just scrubbed it and we went and did something else because... And that's the luxury of making a film for 750 grand because... You know, and writing it yourself, because I'm not having conversations with some guy going, I've just got 3 pages of you writing, and them going, what? You know, and having a breakdown. Yeah. I'm coming down. Yeah.
Those writers, those brilliant writers. Well, that's enough from us for the time being. So let's throw it over to you guys. And if any questions for Paddy, Eddie, or Olivia, then put your hands up, and we'll have roving mics come around. So don't be shy. Anyone at all? There we go. Right in the...
Hi, I was wondering if you could explain how you came up with the title.
Yeah, I'd written a monologue based on this character of Joseph, and it was a man sitting in the chair, in a chair at home, and you know, basically, you know, in our house, in most houses really, you could hear people walking up and down. So when you're a kid and you're up to stuff, and you can hear your mum getting out of bed and all that, it's dead handy. But you know, I suppose it came in the way that, you know, my mum was a big gal. And I just wrote this monologue with this character, and he could hear his wife walking about upstairs, and he referred to her as the Tyrannosaur. And it was no sort of reflection on my mum. It was never a nickname for my mum. It was just your imagination and the writing that you know, where it came from. But I thought then that it was a really great title, and in the film, without, I don't want to reveal too much, but she's basically the presence that haunts Joseph's house throughout the film, and it haunts Joseph really, and you can hear echoes of her all around the house, and basically it's a nickname that this character has for his dead wife. I just revealed it.
Forget what you just heard in the last 10 seconds. Yeah. Was there ever a suggestion that you might call the film Dog altogether and continue on?
I thought about it because I did. I'd said to my wife, she's a great sounding board for stuff, and if I just, she's the first person I called. She's the first person of when I met Olivia and when I found her, I found the actress.
Yeah.
You know, she knows every actress on the planet because she watches so much telly and what have you, you know, and film. She can watch anything. And I'd written it, and I had the script finished, and I said to her, I'm not sure about calling it Tyrannosaur. And she went, why? And I said, well, I just know that when this film's coming out and prior to release, when it starts to build, I've done this kind of circuit before as an actor. I thought all I'm going to get is, you know, where are the dinosaurs? The, you know, 12-year-old kids on YouTube going, well, there's no dinosaurs.
How many times have you had the dinosaur question?
Well,
So
you know, not to me
from wise
personally,
asses?
you know, but yeah, there's enough wise asses out there to know. But then you got to understand, you know, that yeah, on one hand you can understand it. You're some kid going on the net and going, oh, it sounds like a monster movie, and there's some geezer in a wife-beater vest with a big pickaxe handle in his hand.
Yeah.
And you're thinking, what's this about? But you know, I know for a fact now that there's some very sort of on-the-ball film goers out there that do appreciate a bit of ambiguity and do like things, you know, to be surprised by bits and pieces. So, you know, you've got to have faith in your audience.
Absolutely. And if you haven't seen Dog Altogether, is it on the internet? Or
I think somebody put it on YouTube. So.
Oh, it's on YouTube. It's fantastic. You should check it out. Any more questions for the guys? Right there, and then the front row here.
Is there another Peep Show series?
That was my next question.
Hi. I just want to ask you about working with Peter Mullan and how you guys, Eddie and Olivia, how did you start to build up the characters? Like, what did you do? Did you, like, for Olivia, did you sort of look at women who were maybe domestically abused, or Eddie, did you sort of, I don't know, I'm curious to see how you sort of started to build up the characters and stuff.
For me, the script, the character Hannah was such a whole person that Paddy had written that there was anything, any work beyond that was a sort of bonus, because he'd written this whole lovely person. But I did speak to a couple of women who work for Refuge, who gave me a case study, a particularly nasty case study, which I showed to Paddy, which just was so shocking. Had it been put on film, I don't think anyone would have believed it. And so what you see in Tyrannosaur is a very tame version, really, of some of the stuff we read. And just that sort of in the background, I suppose, informs you, you know, the level of fear that these people can feel. And Paddy took me to meet some friends of his you'd known for a long time.
Yeah, yes.
Who the woman had found God, hadn't she? And
yeah,
she'd
they were
suffered
basically Christians, and you know, they you know, they were just good. It was good to meet them, just so it could inform Olivia a bit
I
about
don't know anything about that
sort of community, really.
Yeah.
You know, and this woman also worked in a charity shop, you know, a Christian charity shop. So, you know, just tiny things informed Olivia's performance. Because I remember the first day of shooting, so we were doing this wide shot, and Olivia, we went to rehearse the scene. You know, it's the first one up, and Peter's behind this clothing rail because his character hides away there from the world. And before she walks up to him, Olivia goes up to the door and puts the close sign on it. And I remember that as you went to do it, you turned to me and went, you know, is this okay? You know, look, is it, you know, I'm doing this because, you know, your friend said that that's what she does. And it was just like, do what you got to do. It's only a tiny thing, but just those little things help inform the character, inform the world. You know, they're the little pieces of texture, you know, and that's why I think it's sometimes important to go out and meet people and get on the trail a little bit, because they're only tiny things, but they inform a lot, you know.
What did you do? I don't know.
I used your research.
Oh.
It turned up, and Olivia had a lot of research for me to read, so I read it, and it was in good for me, because I could see the lengths to which these men would go to control their wives. But then what I have to do is I have to understand why they're doing it. The trick is not to play an evil person, it's to play, there's no such thing as good or bad people, there's just unhappy people in search of happiness. So therefore I have to work out what these men do and basically trace it back. Well, how scared must they be in order to do this? And then Paddy had written such a great script that was very, very clear I think actors make good writers and good directors, because an actor's job is, in the maze of a script, an actor's job is to plot a journey and then go on that journey. And what Paddy's writing did was, it was very easy to find that journey and to go on that. And the film is like that. The film is a very clear, emotional roller coaster ride. And that's what you do. You go on, as an actor, you go on a roller coaster ride. Now, when you see a leading man play a part, the audience sit on a roller coaster ride with him, and me and Paddy usually play the guys who go boo. but that's what you do, and so you have to plot it with that in mind.
How much rehearsal time did you have on this?
Very little. I don't think I had any rehearsal
No,
time.
Eddie had none.
I just turned up and did it, really.
Yeah, and we just sat. You know, it's very weird. You got to cast right. You know, you just got to, and the rest of it is just the communication, the understanding. The best writing is the simple writing. It's the simple truth. You know, and we had a morning. I did a little bit of work with Samuel Bottomley, who was the little kid in the film, just to get him familiar with Peter, and just to make sure that we could get the right sort of reactions out of him we needed, and he was brilliant. And it was about making him feel safe. And, Peter and Olivia, we were in Sheffield. We sat across from each other one morning, read a few scenes, and all I did was sat at the table and just had a little look either way and went, shall we go to the pub? Because it was done, it was done. It really was done.
So as a director, you are every actor's dream. That's
Yeah, come on, let's go to
pretty
the
much
pub.
There's a gentleman down here, right here.
Hi, this is a question for Paddy and Eddie. You've both done little British films, you've done big Hollywood blockbusters. I'm kind of wondering, as an actor, which affords you more freedom?
Well, in my experience, the smaller films have afforded me more freedom. And quite rightly, if you do a big film like a Bourne movie or whatever, you realise the significance of your gig. You're a very small little cog in a huge machine. Well, that's not to say that that little cog isn't of any importance, but it's strange for me because the Bourne movie, because Paul Greengrass shot in a real sort of low-key way, and had a big sequence in that at Waterloo Station, and it was walking amongst real commuters, and you had Matt Damon there, and nobody really knew he was there because Matt Damon works like that. He doesn't stroll to set with loads of people around him. You can walk up the street quite happily, and it's a while before you have to stand still for people to go, there's Matt Damon, which happened, which was actually fantastic to see, because you could, after a while you could begin to see commuters. If you were there for too long, you'd see people then just start to go, and then you'd have to go and hide upstairs for 20 minutes and let it disperse, because not only are you seeing Matt Damon, you got off your train in the morning, you're seeing Matt Damon, but you're getting off the train and seeing Jason Bourne with his full gear on, around the... And it must have been so surreal for people.
In Tyrak, I believe, wasn't it?
But it was very... it was very low-key the way that Paul did it for a film that was, that you would think is a juggernaut. Whereas my other experience of it was on Cinderella Man, and that felt more like how you would classically make a movie with all the trucks, with all the lights, with all the extras, and it was a period piece, and with all the people, and so it was two very different sides. But on Cinderella Man, they'd cut your scenes and not even tell you, so you'd turn up ready to shoot scenes and they'd gone, which was odd to me. But I think for myself, the smaller films, and being lucky enough to have some really good relationships with not only Shane and Pavel, but James Marsh, and people like that. I think, I don't know for you, Eddie, but it feels a bit more collaborative in my experience.
Yeah, it's much more collaborative. You feel more, you have more influence, but it's just a different discipline. These big films they're kind of like big oil tankers that are very hard to turn, and once you're on them, you're stuck on them, and you've got to go with the flow. But that doesn't mean to belittle them in any way, because when they're made well, when a big blockbuster is done well and you're involved in it, it's a work of genius. It's fantastic. The problem with blockbusters is, if you spend 80 million on a movie, you're going to get your money back, because the studios are going to spend 150 million to promote it. So they're going to get people to come in. So the danger with these films is that there's no risk to them, and because there's no risks, they become very mundane. There's no creative flow. When we did Sherlock Holmes, it felt like a very small movie because it was an unknown entity, you know, and we didn't know whether it was going to work, and it was a risk, and it was great fun to do. And I'm very proud of the film. I think it was a really good blockbuster movie. You went to watch it and you thought, God, this is a really great movie. Some of them, when you're working on them, what money can do to you is any time when you're in a creative process, you have a choice: is it A or B? Now, if you use money wisely, you'll keep on having the courage to answer those questions, and then you'll answer more questions, and the film will become more complex, and it will become a better work of art. What money can do is you can say, I don't have to answer that question yet, I'll put it off. I'll put it off and put it off. And by the time you get to filming, you have a very boring, uncomplicated film. And that's what a lot of blockbusters end up being.
Are you done with blockbusters, Paddy? Do you think?
Well, I haven't been invited on board one for a while, but yeah, I think you have to number one audition to get in them, and pretending to swing a sword around your head in an office in Soho, for some come on man, monster movie thing is not my idea of fun. Yeah, but I got the Bourne gig. I was walking down Soho and Paul Greengrass went, "Oh mate," I said, "Hey Paul, how are you?" He goes, "What are you doing?" Later in the year, I said, "Oh, nothing, mate." He goes, "I might have something for you," and that was it. And I got a call 6 months later. It's Paul. And hello. And so it was a really odd way of how it happened to me.
That's how it should always happen, if you ask me. I think we've got time for one more question. Anyone got any more questions for Paddy, Olivia, or Eddie? Oh, right back there. Can you wait for the microphone? Thank you.
Go on, son. Yeah, I'll be mad.
Just how did you find your way, like, between working with a script and the more sort of the Shane Meadows way of working, or however,
Well, I've been working with Shane a couple of times. Shane will definitely have a script and a story down, but Shane has a way of working where he gets people to sort of improvise within the scene. And then, has his own methods and approaches to working. I didn't do that with Tyrannosaur. I was very sort of, not strict, but I was definitely certain that it wasn't an improvisational movie. I wasn't trying to find it that way. I think it, like Eddie and Olivia said, this film was quite clearly written, and the characters were quite clearly written. So there wasn't any need to go off page, or there wasn't anything new to discover. If anything, the spontaneity came from the moments, on set. We did the interactions with the actors, or what was going on in your vision and in the outside world, really. Because we set it on an estate in Leeds, and one thing I learned working with Pavel Pavlikovsky was that the location was really, really important, Because what he used to do was he'd set himself in Margate for a film, and then start to bring in the locals, the eccentrics and characters, and bring them into the movie and give it another layer of authenticity. So that was something that really stuck with me, and it happened with Tyrannosaur. So, for scenes in the movie, we've got the women who work in the local charity shop in one scene, and we've got the community in the wake scene, and a lot of little things kicking off on the state informed the way that I went about shooting certain scenes. But that was it, it was never really the same sort of improvisational place, really.
Was that from, experience? Is that working?
Yeah.
Was that from experience of acting and being in these improvisational situations where you just want to sort of drop that process and just you wish there was a script there?
Yeah, I wanted to drop it. Just for my film, I've got nothing against it, and when it's done well, like the way Shane does it, it works brilliantly. But in some circumstances, it doesn't. And with Shane, I can improvise forever and a day. But I've been on some sets and the director's going, "Oh, just improvise," and you go, "Improvise what?" But I think it was just something important to me. I realised as an actor, I was going through this process of having done a lot of improvisations and just realising that if you're going to have a career as an actor, you better learn how to do scripts. It's sort of a really huge requirement of being one. And so I think that somehow informed Tyrannosaur and the reason why I was so sort of dead on. I wasn't over them every word like I described earlier. It wasn't that sort of militant. But it was like, no, it's not a riff fest. At the end of the day, you create that world for them to be creative. you know, and then lovely surprises come because they're in that world, and little things happen, bits of inspiration that ultimately stay in the film. But that's creating a moment, you know.
Fantastic.
There was a question at the back too.
Oh,
which
one at the
we-
back? Okay, yeah, great.
He's
Well spotted.
hiding.
Well, just the microphone's
Sorry.
coming around.
Sorry.
Good eye.
Well done.
It'd be a bit mean if we ignored it.
I was just wondering, it sounds like really gritty and sort of real film, which would probably be quite harrowing for an audience. And I just wondered, in the making of it, how much it sticks with you, or whether it does, or are you able to kind of, after having been through the worst of it, switch off and sort of move on with life, or does it stick with you? And if it does, what is the stuff that does stick with you? And is it good, or is it bad, or what?
For the actors, you mean?
Well, no, actually, for everybody.
Well, for me, it
concerned.
was different because I'd written it as well, and then you direct it, and obviously then you've got a whole other process of editing it and putting it together. So I lived with it for a lot longer, I suppose, and I found it a really emotional experience making Tyrannosaur. I think there was a few times that I got, you know, upset with it because I just, you know, it sounds gritty and, you know, and it's tough in moments, but ultimately I think we made a really beautiful movie, and we did manage to make a love story that does have hope, and so I always felt very emotional about it. I haven't seen it for a long time now. I might not see it ever again, I don't know, but for me it was an emotional thing, and it stayed with me for a very long time. Yeah.
And Eddie and Olivia, to stay with you?
Not really, to be honest with you. I was on it for a short time. And also, I think sometimes the darker the material, the more humour there is on set. Actors have a gallows humour, in a sense, you know. Making Vera Drake was at the final scene when you knew Vera was going to be sent to prison. I've never laughed so much in my life. and I think it's naturally kicks in, because what you're doing is when the camera rolls, you're going to a dark place, and when it stops, you counterbalance it with having a laugh.
It was, yeah, definitely one of the most enjoyable experiences of my life. And although I felt bereft when it was finished, but I think that was because it was such a beautiful... It's only 4 weeks we were all together, and we all became incredibly close. And the crew, we all still text each other, saying, "Have you seen this? It's ever so good. People like it." We're all getting, you know,
I've seen the poster.
Seen the poster. Sending each other pictures of the poster. It means so much to all of us, this film. But yeah, although it's a hard watch, it was beautiful to do.
That's fantastic. I will ask one last question, and that's to bring up awards. This film's been talked about as an awards contender. The O word has even been mentioned, especially in connection with you, Olivia. How does it make you guys feel? Yeah. Is it a surreal experience, or is it something you have no control over, so you just, you know, let
I can't even think about it, because if you do, then ultimately it could lead to very huge disappointment.
Right.
So in my, obviously I think they're worthy of every award going. But honestly, it's such a really it's a really odd grand, all that stuff, and people get very excited, and I've seen people crushed in the final hour, and they've invested so much because they've actually been told, "You're a dead cert," you know, and they've sat there and not got it, and it's ruined their night. And I just think, you know, my victory is the film. I got this film made, and it will still be around in 10, 20 years' time, and the rest of it is a fun night out, and if people want to recognise it for awards, that's amazing, but I can't really go there.
And Eddie and Olivia, do awards matter to you guys? Do you?
Well, it's not my... you know, to be honest with you, this film isn't my gig.
Yeah.
It's Olivia and Peter's gig. And I think, you know, what I'm most pleased about in the film is that people can see Olivia do what we always knew she could do. And it's taken, in fact, it's taken an actor to cast her in that, because actors love actors, and they love the chameleon quality of actors. And the people who pigeonhole people in this industry, the people in power are the people with the opinions, not the people who create.
Yeah.
The people who create don't have the power. The people who have opinions have the power, and opinions are very, very limited.
Yeah.
And Paddy is a creative force, is an actor, and he cast Olivia. And what I'm most pleased about is seeing Olivia. It's people being able to see Olivia for what we always knew she could do.
Oh, Eddie.
Are you starting to look at the mantelpiece and maybe going, oh, maybe maybe something.
No, and
She's won an award already
Oh, of course, but yeah.
at Sundance.
At
she
Sundance,
was.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. 2 awards. You won another one somewhere, yeah?
Russia,
She can't
I
even
think.
remember. There's been that many. Russian won it. Yeah, they never turned up.
Oh man, we'll get on it. We'll get on that one. Brilliant. The film's out October 7th. Thanks to Studio Canal and of course Apple. Podcast's up in a couple of days' time. But most of all, thanks to you guys for coming, and to Olivia Colman, Eddie Marsan, and Paddy Considine. Thank you very much.
Thank you for coming.
So you met Eddie on Red Riding, I presume? Or?
Yeah, we both. We were just saying that the first time I saw Eddie was on Frith Street and. Yeah, swinging around a lamppost. Yeah, we just happened to pass each other, and there was an awkward sort of, I know you, and we just crossed paths, and I rang my wife and said, I think I've just walked past Eddie Marsan, but it was on Red Riding. I mean, I was aware of Eddie's work for years, I'd seen his work and been a fan of his work, so we met on Red Riding, and when I wrote this role, I was trying to think of who would be the ideal person for it, and we didn't have a great deal of money to make the film, but I knew that I needed somebody who was quality, and because there was some difficult scenes within the relationship between Olivia and Eddie, between those two characters, it was really important to me that Olivia was comfortable with who was playing James. I didn't want any sort of anybody who was a bit obtuse and a bit method, as they like.
Great stuff. Now, please welcome the writer-director of Tyrannosaur, Mr. Paddy Considine, and one of the stars of the movie, Eddie Marsan. Great to see you, man. Eddie? Hello. Hello, how's it going? Paddy, let's talk about what Tyrannosaur is, because people may not know. We've just seen the trailer, but can you give them an idea of the film in a broader scope?
Yeah. Oh, God.
Put you on the spot.
Yeah, Tyrannosaur, I suppose, is a, people have described it as a pretty tough film, but I always wanted the film to be a love story, sort of about two people from two different ends of society, if you like, who sort of form a kind of companionship, become soulmates, if you like, because they're both living with sort of fears and difficulties of their own. And I guess the film was just, I'd acted for so many years that I just felt that role.
Absolutely. I think Olivia's actually here, so please put your hands together for Olivia Colman.
Sorry.
That's a chair. Olivia will soon follow.
Sorry.
Here she is. Olivia Colman, everybody. Yeah.
You're late.
Sorry.
You're late.
Sorry.
Again.
Were you like this on set? Or
Yep.
It's a nice tight ship. So, Olivia, can you talk about your character? And you're playing Hannah in this. Who is Hannah?
Hannah is, on the face of it, a very a middle-class woman with a very strong. She's a Christian, very strong faith in God, and she seems like everything is great in her world, but it's not.
I think because it was based on a short film that I wrote, and when I made this short called Dog All Together, like after I'd done it, all I really wanted to do with the short was just prove that I could tell a narrative in 15 minutes. I just looked at it, the need to begin to sort of write and direct my own work after having collaborated on other people's work over the years, and I thought it was time that I established my own voice. And I think Tyrannosaur is the result of years of frustrations and also just sort of, I suppose, making sense in some way of my place in the world, of the world that I grew up around.
Yeah.
Whereas Tyrannosaur is a very sort of heightened and at times extreme sort of interpretation of that. I guess it was, because you write it, I guess it's your voice coming from a place of expression, and I think I was just trying to make sense of a lot of things.
And Eddie, can you talk about your character and tell us who he is? And
I played the character of James, who's married to Olivia, and he's not going to win the Husband of the Year competition. He's abusive, and he's a control freak, and he's, in a sense, he's the secret that Olivia keeps quiet.
And where did you two guys meet? Because I know, Paddy, you'd met Olivia on Hot Fuzz,
Yeah.
of all movies.
call it. I
Right.
needed somebody, a good actor who could be in control of it and really understood that there was a human being there and not a sort of a superficial monster.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you know, Eddie kindly read for the role because he didn't really have to. You know, his
The
work,
part's yours,
his
essentially,
work
but I'm gonna read
speaks
it
for
anyway.
itself. You know, but I just needed to know how, you know, it was going to work with Olivia. And Eddie was the first actor in at the top of the day, and it just blew everybody away. And then I had to meet another like 15 actors, knowing that I'd bagged it.
So you just sped read them really quickly. It was
Yeah,
like,
got them in
done,
and out.
bye.
Yeah, I gave them more time, but it was really interesting. You know, having been on the other side of it so many times in the casting chair, going into a room, meeting people, and it's a really sort of odd process being on the other side of it. But you see how it works because, you know, ultimately, it's not about whether people the people who didn't get the role were good or bad. They're just not right for